Ben Mack is one of the most amazing people I know. I love this man very much. He wrote this book, which you will get a copy of after his presentation today, called Think Two Products Ahead. And the funny thing about authors, if you ask Ben about this book, he'll say, oh, it was okay, but I'd really rather talk about this one that I just wrote or this one that I just did. But this is an awesome book. It is one of the best books I've ever read on marketing, and I love this book, and that's why everybody's going home with it today. And so come up and get one after he's done talking at after lunch today. Ben Mack he's helped build, he told people how to sell $125 million of yo-yos, and there's a lot more. He's worked with some of the biggest countries, some of the biggest businesses in the world, and he's now helping entrepreneurs build businesses and working with them on a coaching level and doing quite well. He's got a good brain trust around him, too, that is a very good thing, too. And he's just a marketing genius, and he's like Mark or me. You got to follow him and you got to stay close, or else you could get lost. And he's so educated that a lot of his references are often to things that you may not have read since high school. So be ready for that, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ben Mack.
Thank you. Very nice. And it's Kevin who purchased all of these books for you guys. So just that at some point you're going to want to say thank you to him. Let's give Kevin a round of applause now. Thank you. It's never too soon to applaud. Kevin's Psychology of Persuasion was a book that I read shortly after Cialdini that turned me on to the idea that we have power within us that I was not taught about in elementary school, high school. It wasn't until I was at UCLA that a like-minded friend said, hey, I'm reading this book, you should read it. I happened to take the book Influence. I was an elementary school friend with Philip Munger, whose father is Charles Munger, Warren Buffett's strategist. And I had the book Influence, and Mr. Munger said, that's the one book I tell everybody that they should read. And I was like, well, that's a hefty endorsement. I have had great fortune in my life that has come from masters of knowledge, literally imbuing it in me. The first master that I got to work with, at the age of 12, I spent 3 days interviewing Buckminster Fuller. And so I want to take just a moment and ask Mr. Mark Victor Hansen to come back up and explain what having time with our Buckminster Fuller means, because it changed the way that I see the world and energy and the way the universe works. Thank you.
Give him a round of applause for doing good thinking.
Thank you.
And I did not know I was going to talk about Bucky, as he was affectionately called, but Fuller was born, as I said, in 1895, went to Harvard. He was a fifth in a family that did it. He read the diaries. He got kicked out of Harvard 3 times for doing fun, cool stuff that all of us would like to have done. Just had the greatest mind, read Einstein's E equals MC squared and said it's E is all the energy of physical universe, writes his book called 4D Time Lock, How the Fourth Dimension Works, goes and says to publish it, and they said, look, there's 11 people that understand Albert's stuff, and you're not on that list. So Bucky and Brilliant says, there's one guy I'll know. Said, who's that? Said, Dr. Einstein, he's over at Princeton. 3 weeks later, he gets called from Princeton and says, young man, you absolutely amaze me. Come over and be at Princeton. So Bucky goes over there, and he's got one shoe on and no sock, one sock on and no shoe. He just falls in love with this guy. Proctor's for, meaning he was a teaching assistant like I was to Bucky. And they're doing a test, 2,000 kids in the class on physics, and 1 hour and 10 questions. The 10th one's unanswerable. Einstein says that. All the kids have left. There's one little kid up at the very top writing furiously away. Bucky and Albert walk up and say, what are you doing? He says, I got the answer to the 10th question. Just hold on. I'm almost done. Albert says, were you here at the beginning of the class? He says, no, sir, I had a flat tire. I got here 15 minutes late. Please, 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 Professor, I think I got the answer. Hands it to Albert and Bucky. They read it and go, my God, that was unanswerable. You weren't here at the beginning, but we said that's impossible to answer. You all saw that movie, I hope, by my dear friend Ronnie Howard called A Beautiful... If you didn't see it, you got to see it. That's about that guy. That's the kind of guy Bucky is. Bucky he died at 89, knew his wife called him up and said, I'm ready to die. You promised you'd be on the other side waiting for me. So Bucky comes home and gives himself over to the Great Spirit 2 minutes before Ann Fuller did. What a mensch. Wrote 40 books, 2,000 major inventions. You all know geodesic domes, which, are wonderful. Spherical buildings that are like an eggshell, 1/100th, 1,000th of the eggshell, the way universe builds, for which he did fullerenes, which got the posthumous Nobel Prize. Some of you want to study. I'll just do one thing, and he was so lucky to spend 3 days. I read his book. It's a great book. You want to read it, Fuller's Earth. There's nothing on Bucky. I teach a class on Fuller with Marshall Thurber, who's got a 300 IQ, who's probably the smartest guy I know on the planet. And Marshall and I are scholarly in Bucky like he is. And Marshall and I say, look, every genius has three things. They think macro. Bucky always thought universe and deductively went back to the specific. Number two, they change your perspective. I said from weaponry to livingry. And number three, they change the metaphor. And the metaphor is we can make universe work for 100% of humanity. And what Bucky, said, gave to the young world, you and I and a few of us, go out and make it happen, and that's what we're doing. So you got one of the master maestros of our time that is ready to take you on a journey there. So give him one more round of applause, and thanks for letting me share with you one last.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm not quite ready to take the stage. Before we begin, I want to bring up a friend, a mentor of mine, somebody who is a master of persuasion, to talk about what it is I'm going to talk about. Forgive me for, before we begin, getting so meta, but he's going to talk about what we're going to talk about. You following? Because today's presentation is on the culture code. And so before I talk about the culture code, will you please help me welcome Dave Lacani to the stage to talk about the culture code.
Ben's going to warp your mind. I'm going to tell you that right now. What he's going to talk about to you, you're going to be sitting around thinking about for a long time going, what did he say? And then it's going to come to you in little pieces, and you're going to say, wow, that's really, really profound. It'll change me. He's going to talk about the culture code, though. Clotaire Pai wrote this book called The Culture Code, and it's about how people make decisions. It's about the things that they say versus the things that they do, and what are the precursors to making decisions. And so this book is all about exactly how, and he uses a form of deep hypnosis to get people to really talk about what it is that causes them to think about things, and then from that he extrapolates that and turns it into he turns it into mythologies, metaphors, and things that marketers can use in order to then better influence. So one of the ideas that he had was around Jeep, for example. He said that the reason that the square lights on Jeep didn't work is because they went away from something that looked like a horse. This was two horses, two eyes, freedom, independence, all of these kind of things. He went backwards in this, and then when they returned to the round eyes of the Jeep, or the round lights on the Jeep sales went back up again. It cost millions and millions of dollars to have Clotaire Pai, who is he's actually a psychologist or psychiatrist from France, come in and work with your corporation and do these things. I interviewed him for several hours, and the guy is fascinating. He's also very hard to understand. And one of the things that I found, Ben wrote his book called Think Two Products Ahead. And after he wrote that, I called Ben up and I said, Ben, do you realize what you've done here with this book, right? And he says, well, no, not really. And I said, what you've created is a poor man's culture code. You've created this idea that's so powerful. You've shown people exactly how they can elicit that kind of information without having to be hypnotists, without having to do all of these things, to create real and impactful influence and persuasion through your company using marketing materials that are no one else will be able to use. It's exactly what's allowed Ben to create some of the breakthroughs he had, create the yo-yo craze of the late 90s, to be able to create some of the biggest brands in the world, AOL Singular, and dozens of other brands that you've heard of. Ben has worked on and helped those brands get where they're at today. And he's leveraged that material for you in a way that you will take so many notes, if you're smart, that you'll be able to go back and apply, whether you're applying it in advertising, marketing, or you're applying it in day-to-day sales. That's exactly what Ben's going to teach you.